Woo. Good morning everyone and welcome to Utah. We have an incredible location today where we've been shooting, and we've got an important question because everyone's asking, what is the best camera to buy?
Depends on your budget and depends on your purpose.
No, I wanted the name like brand X or brand Y, and that's the only one. Alex?
Canon Cool Shot. No, Power Shot, that's what they're called.
That's beautiful. Okay, I want to kind of ask them what camera they recommend for who, because I think it's gonna be super important for you if you're watching this, and in which circumstances, because that's gonna be extremely important. So we're gonna sit here in this Hollywood setting. Let's get started. We've been shooting and I gotta reveal something. I kind of messed up Jerome's drone. Here's a clip of what happened. I tried to grab it and put it back up, and it looks like I'm just throwing it away. And
at least we had a good laugh.
Yeah, so if you need a drone, those are really good, the Mini 3 Pros, but yeah, the gimbal doesn't like to fall on the ground. So Alex, Jerome, super important question. It's a question we all get a lot. What gear to buy and when? I think it's gonna be interesting to have your perspective because everyone's shooting different brands. At the end of the day, I'll let you know, guys, what I took for this trip in Utah, which has been extremely intense. We've been taking really cool photos from different places, and it's been sunset, sunrise, and nighttime, so we haven't slept much, so we might steal a lot of random stuff. Jerome, yes. What are you shooting with right now, especially after having been robbed in New York City?
Well, it's an interesting question because now you're asking me what are you shooting with.
Yeah.
As a photographer, I'm shooting with a Sony a7 IV. This is not my most used camera though. My most used camera is the iPhone 13 Pro Max.
Oh.
Nowadays I get hired a lot for social content, for reels, for stories, even making reels and stories for other companies, other pages, not necessarily only for my page. So actually, yes, I brand myself as a photographer.
Yeah.
And so the Sony a7 IV is my go-to professional camera for anything professional, cinematic, anything like that. But nowadays I notice more and more that since my work is mostly social content, the iPhone 13 Pro Max is the camera that I use the most. The iPhone just has like a look that appeals a little bit more on social media. Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of like my go-to thing.
Same.
Really?
Yeah.
But you have a big camera.
Yeah. Oh, it's just because I don't need to upgrade. Okay. Like I've had this for like almost 5 years now.
So you're on a 1DX Mark II. What's your go-to lens on?
This is a 1635.
1635. And you changed your go-to lens recently, no?
I don't really have a go-to lens. Okay. Nowadays, more and more, whenever I go on a trip, I tend to choose most prime lenses rather than heavy zoom lenses, just because I want to focus, if I am to shoot like anything professional, try to get the best possible photos. But yeah, again, like I would shoot all the behind the scenes and all the rest of the work on my iPhone. The phone has been very game-changing for every behind-the-scene things.
It's just crazy how quickly it's taking over.
Yeah, Reels and TikToks and all that, and everyone wants that. Get less like YouTube sponsorship, they want it, but they're also asking a lot for Reels. So that's something to know. But again, I think people, they want to do it for the love of photography, you know?
That's a good point. Like I actually really enjoy a lot of like the pressure being taken off of using these for like work.
Yeah.
I used to put a lot of pressure on the photos I was taking and creating and stuff like that, and now I can just whip out my phone, like shoot what I need, and then take, you know, put the fun back into shooting these cameras for fun.
Do you have another camera? I think you were saying you have another camera coming at home right now. What is that?
Yeah, I have a Lumix S5.
Okay.
It's a pretty decent camera. Actually, it's a really great camera. It's just the autofocus is really lacking. That's kind of the kicker with Lumix cameras. But like everything else is really cool. And they shoot like raw in body. It's pretty crazy. And
aren't you forgetting one? The Power Shot?
Oh, my Power Shot, yeah.
Yeah. You're getting like an old school camera just for the fun. That's something that I highlight a lot. It depends what your purpose is. If you're trying to create content, if you're trying to have fun doing photography, maybe something easier like a Power Shot with nostalgic feels can be just as rewarding. That's why the video I did when I was shooting Leica, I had fun. It removed some pressure. I was just like shooting stuff, and don't get me wrong, I love this, but it's more pressure. I think you're right. Yeah. So what would you recommend for someone starting who wants to actually feel like he's taking great photos?
I can't recommend anything other than Sony at this point.
Really?
Like, wow. To be honest, yeah.
That's a lifetime Canon shooter.
Canon comes out with great cameras, but Sony's got like so many other factors. Like they have a great community. They're really supportive of their pros and everything. Yeah,
a lot of my friends who switched from Canon to Sony, even having R5s, they do feel that there is a big difference and what they can pull out of their images, especially in the darks, you know, and dynamic range. So they've been really impressed with that, but it didn't mean that they were not taking great photos before. That is to be remembered. It doesn't matter, you know, in that sense. Okay, Jerome, you got a camera that was stolen?
Yeah, it was the a7 III. My camera bag got stolen in New York City. Be careful with your gear. And I actually bought again the A7 III because it was, for me, the best camera that I was using at the time. I was a hybrid shooter, so I was doing both videos and photos, and it responded pretty much to all of my needs that I had at that time, like high dynamic range, light and compact, very good low light performance.
Yeah.
So I went with the A7 III again, and then when the A7 IV came out, I decided to just like upgrade and to buy that one. Even though it's very similar, there's only like a couple of differences between the A7 III and the A7 IV, namely the flip screen. Because I shoot a lot of vertical stuff, so if I need to go like low down on the ground like this, if I just need to change my perspective and shoot from high up like this, I can watch what's happening. So yeah, no, for me, like this alone is enough to convince me to jump from the A7 III to the A7 IV.
So that's pretty cool. New topic, go-to lens. If you had one lens to go travel the world, because that's what a lot of people want to do.
If I can only have one lens on a Sony setup, I would actually choose a lens that I've actually never tried before. Probably the Tamron 35 to 150.
f2.28.
Yeah, it's just simply because if I am stuck to one lens, that would be the most versatile lens in terms of range. Even though you can't go under 35, but yeah, again, you know, I would never travel probably with only one lens.
So let's say you have that zoom. Now, what prime would you take with yourself? So you have now two lenses. You have one zoom and one prime.
Probably a 14.
14?
Yeah, this one that I have over here, 14-1.8.
Okay.
Great for Astro. And yes, I wouldn't have anything between 14 and 35, but since the sensor is like 33 megapixel, I can always crop in a little bit. I've got a little bit more margin. So yeah, instead of going with like a 24 and not have anything wider. Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah. What about you?
I would say like a 24-70.
Okay.
24-70, because that's just like a standard lens.
Yeah.
I don't know, I've had a weird setup for a long time. I've traveled with a 1635 2.8.
Yeah.
And a 7200, and then two primes, a 50 and a 24.
Alex loves Spain. He likes to carry a huge backpack and
the biggest camera.
And the biggest camera. Your backpack is so heavy.
I carry the primes because I prioritize like quality over everything. If like given the choice, I would have to go with like a 24-70.
What was your prime? Your one prime you would take?
Probably the 50.
50? Yeah. Oh yeah, 50. Yeah.
I've always had the 50 because it's the closest to like what the human eye perceives.
50, I love that. Yeah. So my setup in Utah is simply all my lenses possible. No, jokes aside. So I have my 70-200, I have a 50mm 1.2, I have my 14mm 1.8, 24-1.4, and 16-35. The reason is I have two cameras, I also need more lenses just to balance that out. But having tried that 24-70 f2.8, the new version, so nice, so light, if I really would recommend someone, I would say go for a 24-70, especially if you're wanting to travel or like have a high diversity, and then maybe a prime. If you want to do Astro, I would say 14 or 21.8. If you want really tight portraits, 85. If you like a little more larger, I love the 50mm f1.2. You've seen a lot of videos with me with that. And today was a great example. In the cave, we had like those crazy rays of light coming in, and we were like throwing dust, and I almost killed all my cameras with the dust, but that's okay. I think the shots came out great. And we were shooting at 24mm and then the 14, and then we switched quickly to the 50mm. So bonus question for you guys, what would be the two most important pieces of gear outside of the camera and the lens that you think everyone needs in their bag? Let's start with you, Alex.
Number one is an L bracket.
Ooh.
It just makes life so much easier, and it doubles as like a carrying handle.
Yeah.
So I've had this like forever. I've got a couple. There are
so L bracket, you can put it like that on the tripod or like that, which you don't have to move the ball head.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it resists better to the wind, like instead of having to like put it on the side. If
oh yeah, yeah.
That's a plus point.
Yeah, less wind drag also. Yeah. That's really important.
Less unbalance.
So L bracket, and what's the second one?
So I like to use like a Promis, like a quarter.
It softens.
There's different levels.
Yeah.
So like I like the quarter a lot, because it just blooms the highlights. Like if you were to shoot this, like the whole landscape would glow really nicely.
Yeah.
I love like the quality that comes out of it. It's a toss up between that and just like a blower.
Yeah, which I just used because all my gear was full of dust from that shoot earlier.
The number one piece of gear would be a mobile gimbal. So the one that I use currently is a DJI OM5. Even though the 5 and the 4 had like calibration issues, so I wasn't a big fan. I was a huge fan of the DJI OM3, but just like mobile gimbal in general, that's one important piece of gear that I would recommend, especially if you can put it on the tripod. You know, it gives a different perspective. It has such a game-changing aspect in terms of storytelling, and even like simple visuals on the iPhone, on the gimbal, if you follow someone, those videos look way better than anything that you can do with a camera without any gimbal. Piece of gear number 2 would probably be a 360 camera. I've been using a lot of those recently, and it just gives like a different perspective, and you have so much room to play around with like the small like tiny planet effect,
okay,
or if you have one of those sticks that are invisible, if it's aligned with the dual camera of the 360 camera, it just kind of looks like a drone that's floating around you. So for me at least, since 360 cameras are not extremely popular to everyone yet, for me I found it to be like game changing, just to give like a different perspective to play around. It's a very unique style of camera. It does give you like much more ideas. Okay, how can I use this to explore around my neighborhood, around like, you know, different spots that I've already shot with a different camera, but just to get a different perspective. So yeah, for me it has opened a lot of doors.
I like that.
What about you, Pierre?
100% the filters. I think it changes everything. Just the CPL, like it's gonna make the blues darker. It's gonna be really, really cool. And my second accessory would be honestly my big design clip, just to put my camera, because it's so handy to have it. And the more you put it in your backpack and the less you shoot. Like that barrier to getting a camera out of a backpack is huge. You're like, nah, it's okay, it's not that great, you know? But once you have a camera in hand, your brain goes into creative mode. And then you start to find angles. You're like, okay, maybe here, you know. I think at the end of the day, guys, remember, if you're doing it for the love, stay in the love. Do not try to get outside validation for your work. If you love what you do, this is the most important. You know, it doesn't matter if you have 1 like or 1 million. Yeah. If you have fun doing it and if you love it, 100% the most important. Thanks. I think we're gonna go take a nap or prepare for sunset shot.
Let's go.
And guys, thank you so much for having been here. We'll see you in the next episode. Remember, the gear is important, but your skill is just as important. So the next session of 30-day adventure to great photos will be starting soon. Make sure you're on the list. Get out there, go shoot, try something different, try something new.